All right, we are live. Awesome. Hey, Shawn here from RPH Ally, Kevin from RPH Ally, and Dr. Richard from RPH Ally. Now we are announcing our men's health channel. So this is exciting. And the reason I'm in my garage, because this is supposed to be like the men's garage, right? Technically, sometimes that's the way I grew up thinking. And my dad had a bunch of tools. I have kids' toys. So there you go. All right, Kevin, what are we talking about today?
Hey, so really excited to bring Richard on board, especially for this men's channel. Richard and I have been, growing kind of like brothers over the last basically year and a half. Just a really good human being that we bounced lots of things back and forth, not just with work, but outside of it. And so when creating this, I just instantly thought of Richard because there is some professionalism we're going to work on with each other. But the thing that I really want to dive into today, Shawn and Richard, is more of just what's behind the scenes. Like what are Shawn and Kevin and Richard doing on a day-to-day basis for ourselves and our families to just keep ourselves healthy, when it comes to a global view. And I'll kick it over to Richard, and he has a really cool story about like how he's kept himself healthy, how he shifted his mindset to keep his patients healthy. But just wanted to hear a little more about that, bud, if you wouldn't mind opening up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it all started with my own personal health problems. So I've had insomnia since I was a little kid, about 10 years old, never could sleep right. I've had irritable bowel since I was 7. Me and my mom ate the same dish. She ended up getting hospitalized. I got very sick. We were on vacation in Virginia Beach. And ever since then, I had horrible abdominal symptoms, diarrhea, constipation, bloating. And I just thought this was my life. Get to college, I'm super skinny, can't put on any size. Thought I was just going to be this skinny, frail kid all my life. And then started to learn some things and realized that, what, I hold my destiny in my own hands. Let me figure out a way to make this stuff better. And I just started sequentially trying things and trying to figure out what were my triggers, like what made me feel worse, what made me feel better. If I did this, did it get worse? If I did this, did it get better? And I realized there was a lot of things I was eating. It was the way I was sleeping. It was the way I was exercising, all of it. And so I began to put together this program as I went through pharmacy school, as I went through medical school, still trying to figure out my body and how my body works and how my body responds to things. And then just, trying one thing at a time, see if it works, see if it didn't work, and then landed up to where I am now and helping people figure out how lifestyle medicine can help them with the things that they're going through, and helping out my family, my friends, and anyone that will listen to me ramble about this stuff, because I eat, live, sleep, and breathe lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, so Richard's a super humble guy, and I brought on a really close friend one time when we had a meeting, and she had a total fan moment, with Richard, just really loving just how real like he is. And so getting into the reality, buddy, is during that time, like there's nothing Neanderthal about it. Like being strong as a man, right, is just something that we want to have. Like we want to be able to provide or at least do the basics for our family that are necessary to take care of the things around the house that we need to, and be capable, overall. So for you, when you're having those issues with, being skinny and wanting to add on more muscle, how was that for your mental health and your spiritual health, kind of going through that part of the journey? If you could dive into that.
Yeah, I remember being in the weight room. First time I ever touched the weight, I was 16 years old. And going back even further than this, another health problem I've had, I was asthmatic, horribly asthmatic. I was on prednisone as a kid. I was fat. I got made fun of for being fat. I got off the prednisone, super skinny, like overnight between 6th and 7th grade. Wow. And then in 9th grade, when I made the basketball team, I'd never lifted weights before. I remember walking in there, putting like 245s on the squat rack, trying to squat, and both of the weights clang off. Like it goes this way and then that way, and both the weights hit the ground, and everybody in the weight room turns around and looks. I couldn't even squat 135. I couldn't even bench 95 pounds, and so I was literally the weakest kid in the gym. And I told myself I would never be weak again. I would never feel that way again, and got super serious about lifting weights. And by the end of the year, I was one of the strongest people on the team.
Wow.
It's just because I put in the work. I lived in the weight room. I lived on bodybuilding.com, like all of these ways to try and improve myself. And it really became the mantra behind my life. It's like, Okay, I may not start out the best. Typically, I start off the worst. I'm horrible when I first start things, but I know through effort, dedication, showing up, that I'm going to get better. And I went to a point where 2 years ago, I pulled a 600-pound deadlift. I was squatting 500 pounds, and my highest bench was 400 pounds. And all this from a kid who couldn't even bench 95 pounds when he first started. So it's just like, and there's setbacks, right? I've pulled things, I've hurt things, I've herniated discs, right? There's always been setbacks, but I just keep saying, what can I do? Figure out what I can do, and then just go do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean real life Captain America right there. You know, going from the weakest to the strongest is a cool thing, buddy. We might have to get you a t-shirt sometime soon. No, but I think that's so important, Richard. Just kind of like diving into like you mentioned it, like not being good and just keep working at it, and being okay with being vulnerable and not being the best, something as men, I think we all struggle with in one way, shape, or form. And it's nice to be able to come together in some level of humility and talk about those things and build off of each other and kind of grow from it. I know for Shawn, like you were looking, buddy, at one time of going, like pro football was your dedication. You're working really hard. You're in boxing, was a really cool thing that you did for a bit, kind of what your grandfather did. But tell me more, buddy, about kind of that journey for you and how it was to like give up those athletic pursuits and then change your mindset, talk to God about it, and then be able to work toward, the career goals you have now.
Yeah, no, that was fun. Thanks, Kevin. I'm not one who likes to live in the past. What's that show called? It's like the MTV show with that guy. I just had it on my mind the other day.
Shawn
Never mind. It was coming to me
very quickly, and I'm just kidding.
Yeah, really quickly. No, it was great because so Rocky was my hero when I knew I wasn't going to be a football player. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get into boxing. But also being a scientist, right? With in pharmacy school, it was like, I think that was pre-pharmacy school, but it was like I knew Rocky was wrong because he drank like the egg raw. I'm like, well, he didn't know that you had to denature the proteins by heating it, so your body will absorb it better, right? But that's where like my start of like eating healthy came into play, because I was probably about 215 and I cut down to about 200 pounds just to be lean, right?
Wow.
And so, but that was all through diet and exercise, and I thought I was like eating well, yeah. Right? But then it wasn't until fast forward, 10, 15 years when my wife got breast cancer was where she put in the work and started looking at what we were eating, how it wasn't healthy, and how we needed to get there, because that became her passion. Her like dedication to her own life is really diving into like, not drinking alcohol. And because that actually has significant data behind it for risk of recurrence for breast cancer, right? So that's gone. And then it was just organic foods and things like that, and more she was trying to steer me towards a plant-based diet. And growing up on a farm and hunting, I was like, there's no way I could ever get there. But then last year she's like, well, let's watch that show Game Changers. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, if that strongest man in the world is a vegetarian, like, he's got the right recipe to be able to still get the amount of protein he needs. Anyway, so all that has been like a huge transition. It's been a long journey, right? It's not overnight for sure, but I don't know. It's just been really fun. And then now getting to partner with you and Richard and just talk about these things, to help other men get to where they need to be, because it's not only the food choices, it's mentally getting there. Because like, okay, going out to dinner with my wife and not having a glass of wine, that was a struggle early on, right? That was like, okay, it doesn't feel like we're like really having a date night, right? Where it's just kind of, being able to do what it takes for your family and the best choice for your family, being a man, right? And kind of, I don't know, that does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think there's just a lot of like family backgrounds and cultural backgrounds that lead to some of those things that you have decisions and choices that you feel like you're supposed to make, that then you find out later that I've got to make some pivots or kind of switches there. And, for me, I guess talking about men stuff, like I have those pictures in the background, like everybody has like backgrounds, like when they're doing their meetings and everything. And me in my little tiny office, I've got my stuff on the back there. And a lot of it is the Native American culture stuff, growing up on the reservation, just kind of being tied to that culture, and being a Yakima descendant is a big part of my identity and who I am, and how I try to serve, people. But the one thing I wanted to draw attention to is actually on this side. So there's two pictures I've got back there. The top one is my Papa Walker, and the bottom one is Papa Kleber. So the top one, Papa Walker's on. He's on the reservation. We're pushing our cattle, and he's sitting on the back of his horse. Both of those men are passed away, but just left a really cool mark, on me as kind of a human being. And that's one thing I'd love so much is just bringing multiple generations together. You've got much younger pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, much older pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, and all coming into a room and just talking about their different perspectives and the way they look at life, I think is just really special, to bring us all together and get some new concepts, to be able to pull through, because Papa Walker, pointing the wrong side, but with Papa, so when I talk about the two of them, wonderful men, very kind, loving, like they had those in common for me as a grandson. But one of them worked his entire life, Papa Walker, the one on top, and always wanted to be out on the farm. That was just his kind of mindset, out on the ranch, doing those kinds of things. Papa Kleber, though, like in his retirement, he did woodworking, he did glass work, he did painting, he did, just things that I thought that just broadens my mind, the way that I think about society and appreciate culture and all these other things. So I feel like that's another thing I look forward to in this men's channel. Richard is just getting those concepts, like us bringing that kind of melting pot together and thinking like, oh, that's a new way to think about that. And for you, buddy, as a clinician or as just a human in general, have you had those like epiphany experiences, even on your podcast, where you've heard someone talk about something and just kind of broadened your perspectives and now you think or do things differently?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that school doesn't teach us to do is to be open. It teaches us to be experts, and then you get out and, Dunning-Kruger, you think you know everything. And this has even happened to me. Even knowing about Dunning-Kruger, I still fell victim to Dunning-Kruger effects, especially when I first started learning about nutrition, right? And I think that you have to be confident in who you are, but still have enough humility to know that you don't know everything and be able to ask for help and realize that you're not a finished product, and who you are now is different than who you were 5 years ago. Well, it should, or at least it should be. If you're still the same person that you were 10 years ago, that's a problem.
Yes.
Because you're stuck, you're stagnant, right? You should be constantly changing and growing and incorporating new information and learning new ways of doing things and figuring stuff out. School doesn't really teach you to do that. But when you get out and you get in a group of other people who are like that, or read books that stimulate your mind, this is the kind of pathway that you go towards. And then you end up meeting a Shawn or a Kevin, because that's the journey that you're walking on. And that's what's happened in my life. As I opened my mind to new possibilities and new ways of thinking, I began to meet other people doing the same. And it's been an enrichment for myself, my family, and for those who I get to serve.
I love it. I don't think there's any better way to sign off on this live for us together and on this intro to our men's channel. Just feel very blessed to have both of you guys in my live. Really excited for us to be able to connect with other men out there in the pharmacy world, and hopefully do a little bit good in terms of just bringing them from being stage A to the new individuals they can be, with just being able to partner together with all of us and just learn a little bit and have some fun. Shawn, any parting words, buddy?
Nope, that's good. Both said it well.
All right. Have a great rest of the day, everybody.
Take care.